Okay, Chapter 11, Section 2, The Business of Government, How did Domestic and Foreign Policy Change Direction under Harding and Coolidge? So by the end of the chapter, policies of Harding and Coolidge that favored business growth, most significant scandals during Harding's presidency, and then explain role that the U.S. Played in the world during the 1920s. So if we look at why it matters, this is a period of returning to normalcy, as we kind of talked about before. So conservative policies are going to be put in place that favor big business. So more laissez-faire, less regulation, more letting the free market or the marketplace kind of dictate things. This is a pretty common pattern. We're going to see this again in the 50s, the 80s. We saw it in 2000. And probably in this 2017 current election, we're probably going to see the same pattern because we're already hearing talk of less regulation of businesses and of banks and of the Environmental Protection Agency. So we're going to see a lot more conservative, pro-big business policies being put in place. And so if we look at the Harding administration, in Harding and Coolidge, Andrew Mellon plays a pretty critical role in this. Andrew Mellon is one of the wealthiest people in the world, and he is the Secretary of Treasury. So he is in favor of cutting taxes and spending. He also wants to raise tariffs, very protectionistic policies, and it's going to end up slowing up world trade. And again, really favoring less regulation. So if we look at the Ohio gang, Harding is known for bringing in politicians and industry leaders who are very supportive of him. He brings in a lot of people from Ohio when he was governor of Ohio, and those guys are really going to take advantage of their positions. It's going to lead to a number of scandals. By far, the biggest one is the Teapot Dome scandal. And so the book talks a little bit more about the Teapot Dome scandal. It deals with leasing oil reserves to businesses that were supposed to be set aside for the American military. And there's a couple of officials in Harding's administration that get big payouts for allowing that leasing to take place. And Harding's going to find out a little bit later, and it's going to really hurt him deeply that his friends took advantage of their positions. And so he actually finds out about it when he's on a cruise to, I believe, Alaska. He has a heart attack and eventually dies, and then Coolidge replaces him. Coolidge gets a reputation. He's nicknamed Silent Cal. He really doesn't say too much. And so, for example, in this little poster, a woman came up to him at a dinner party and said, "Mr. Coolidge, I made a bet against a fellow who said it was impossible to get you to say more than 2 words." And Coolidge responds, "You lose," and he didn't speak the rest of the night. But the other thing about Coolidge is he admires big business. He admires the efficiency of it. He really thinks that business leaders and business minds are what should be running America, and a creation of wealth in the wealthiest people will then build up the whole nation because it'll trickle down to people lower down. He's going to support a policy of lowering taxes even more. He's also famous for saying that businesses are a temple and the workers are the worshipers at that temple. So really there's this big, huge faith in what's going to happen. One of the things to keep in mind is that this is not a universal thing. There's trouble below the surface, and we talked about that in the last section. For farmers, textile workers, coal miners, labor unions, minorities, these people were not doing as well financially as everyone else. And so you see weaknesses in the economy that are going to pop up later on. And so if you think about what's coming next is the Great Depression, the elements are there. Look at America's role in the world. We're going to seek an end to the war. We talked about the League of Nations. We develop a world court, the Washington Naval Conference, which is supposed to limit the number of ships people can have in their Navy. The Kellogg-Brand Pact outlaws war. You got a number of countries that sign this. Really, the problem with a lot of these things is they're just good faith. They're a handshake. But most countries are going to make sure that they protect themselves at all costs. And so even though it sounds good on paper, it really isn't going to probably happen. One of the problems that we already talked about is that Germany was going to default on their war debts France is on the process of probably invading Germany. The United States steps in. They send a banker over named Dawes, and he creates what's known as the Dawes Plan. And in the Dawes Plan, the U.S. is going to loan $2.5 billion to Germany. Germany is going to pay $2 billion in reparation payments, and then the Allies are going to turn around and pay back $2.6 billion in war debts. And so even though the United States invests $2.5 billion in this, they end up getting a little bit more for their money. But more importantly, what it does is it really helps uh, prevent war from taking place. So in the peacetime, businesses can kind of get going. And there's a big push to cancel war debts. Coolidge kind of doesn't like the idea of just writing off debt. Debt is debt, it needs to get paid. And so that's why the Dawes Plan gets designed.